product creation, innovation, etc., is one thing, but I would be interested in going much more into like the business strategy and like business problem solving aspect of design sprints.
That was Niko Peltoranta, a digital management consultant for SubZero Consulting out of Helsinki, Finland, and my guest today on the Dallas Design Sprints podcast. I'm Robert Scrobe. Hope you're doing well. On today's show, I'll be talking to Niko about his new business as a management consultant, some of his favorite productivity hacks, and his history with doing design sprints. You'll also hear my several overtures to him to write and publish more of what he's doing, and I probably continue to bug him even after this podcast comes out. I really hope you enjoy the show, and we'll talk to you soon.
Hey, Niko.
Hey, Robert.
Thanks for joining the podcast. It's about time I got you on. I've been wondering when I'm going to be able to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, that 2-week reply time was terrible, but for my defense, it was during Christmas, but sorry about that.
I wasn't waiting with bated breath, waiting for that response to come through. I'm totally fine if you just needed to do your thing and then eventually go, oh, Robert's podcast, maybe I'll consider it. Oh, look at the butterfly. I think I'll stare at that for 2 hours.
But thank you for the invite. Thank you for the patience. Happy to be.
All right, so you are, I think you would self-describe yourself as a business management consultant. But there's a little bit more to that because you just recently, from our conversation, changed your, what would you say, direction, where you were previously doing other types of work and decided to go on a whole different route with your professional career in the short term. So
yes.
Give the listeners a little bit of a background around that, the decision around why you've done it, and what you're looking forward to doing.
Yeah, definitely. So in short, I started at this one startup around 10 years ago, IT company in Finland, and did the whole career ladder climbing thing, and eventually then ended up as the managing director for that company as well. And for the corporation, then otherwise also did some product management and also business development on a European level. And it was super interesting in many ways, and going through that entire path, of course, was fulfilling, to say the least, and got to be in the eye of the storm of this whole industry transformation and what is happening with IT distributors and IT resellers at the moment. It's not necessarily always the sexiest industry, but in any case.
Are you kidding me? Have you ever been inside a development core, like a development team of 60 people, especially when they have to get something out the door? It is the most amazing thing you'll ever experience.
We had a development team, yes, in the company for doing our marketplace stuff. It is amazing stuff. They were great people.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, but all in all, I mean, I ended up in a point. Actually, there was an interesting article. Basically, if you can see your the future of your career, you need to make a change at that point. And it was kind of those types of situations for me at that point. And I had always wanted to start up my own company and feel that energy within, and also just having to really develop and build yourself up and the momentum up to a point where you really get going and you are really on your own. I enjoy that feeling in many ways, and here we are on that path at the moment.
And it's pretty scary too. This is my third time around with my own business, so I can only imagine if is this your first time kind of going out on your own? Have you done it before?
Yeah, this is my first time. I mean, I've only done some music related stuff in the past, freelancing and stuff, but otherwise actual business, this is it. number one.
Okay. Tell me what you do. Why would I be interested in Niko's business or your business that you have?
Actually, this combines the music thing because I used to have a company for the freelancing called SubZero, which I don't even know what that started from, like in the past, as a teenager.
That's Mortal Kombat, by the way.
Yeah, I do know, definitely. But it's also a thing. I'm originally from Finland, so it felt like a thing for me. And my favorite color is blue, and everything just goes together.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So now I got it to a point where I just added consultancy on the end, and we'll see if that sticks in the end. But
I think SubZero could have some really interesting design variations. I'd love to see where that goes eventually.
Definitely. But yeah, so that is what I'm sticking to, at least as a project name for now. Yes.
You also have an interest in design sprints. Tell me a little of how you got introduced to that and where you're taking that forward.
Yeah, definitely. So basically, my first introduction to design sprints was around a little bit over 2 years ago. I was doing my one position change within the company, actually, and I decided to move to Berlin, Germany. And the very first thing that I then did on my trip to Berlin was that, first of all, I had to get an apartment because I was actually moving there for my new position. So I took a cab and I had an apartment set up through Airbnb or something similar. I dropped off my suitcase and then continued with the same taxi towards AJ & Smart's offices there. And we had this whole company event with AJ & Smart then introducing their design sprint concept, and we did a 2-day workshop. And that was then my first intro to design sprints, and I really enjoyed the process in so many ways, actually, already then. And they already introduced some of their first versions of their lightning decision jam process as well back then, and I started using that throughout the following 2 years, in multiple places, in terms of, for example, the product lineup that I was setting up, but then also actually managing this smaller subsidiary IT reseller in Finland as well, and trying to find focus for business strategies, but also improving customer and customer user onboarding processes, etc. They're very much more into the business side in terms of how I actually use them, and now then I did the AJ & Smart Masterclass then almost exactly 2 years later than when I first visited AJ & Smart's office.
So how are you planning on using them going forward? If you have a business-centric mindset, what's your approach? How are you going to sell them that's going to be different from what other potential businesses and competitors may put out there in the marketplace?
Well, I have to say, I really do appreciate the approach, at least what's Jonathan Courtney has said from AJ & Smart is they very much just keep it in that 1 week package. And then if something else is needed, then they do the iteration sprint, for example. But I really do appreciate that approach on just packaging it, and then the customer knows exactly what they can expect and what not to expect as well. And then further development can be in some way arranged, of course, as well. But I do love the packaging and productizing, and that's something that I would be interested in looking into, how you're able to do that even more for business strategy as well, because that doesn't necessarily always need then the 4-day sprint, for example. It can be a combination of various things as well. But going for that approach, definitely.
Do you have people in your current network that you can reach out to for work or for referrals or to kind of explore what you want to do?
Yeah, and I've actually done so already. My network consists mainly of companies, of course, in Finland, SMBs, knowledge worker companies that necessarily don't always have a product in the way. Of course, all companies have some sort of product, but not like any digital platform or a digital product in that sense. might be looking into that. Many industries are going through their own digital transformations. It might be then that, okay, some sort of digital product is needed. But in many cases, it's just about like, okay, how are we able to use, analytics, AI, whatever of these to actually improve processes, etc. And then my hope is to also see how then to use design sprints in some form or another to actually help them go through that and to really gain the focus on, okay, this is where we should go, at least test it out, and then these are the metrics on how we determine, like, did we succeed or not, and shall we continue forward with this or not.
So it sounds like you combine design sprints, running lean, and business management, kind of all in the same package.
Exactly.
When you approach design sprints from the perspective of solving business problems and understanding where they go, how are you planning to showcase that knowledge?
This is actually, once again, one of those things where I think the lightning decision jam is a perfect introduction to how to get things started. And I also I believe in the fact of, like, what many are doing as well, is basically giving people the tools and then, like, letting them try it out for themselves as well. So if I go to a company, for example, and they want to do the first jam with me, then great, that's perfect. But I do also want them to try it out themselves, and if they want to do something a bit more elaborate, then, and they need help with that, then great. But I do believe in giving out there as well. So my first approach is, of course, very much just being talking with my close network, reaching out to them and seeing how I can help them out in terms of, well, everything that I mentioned previously as well. Otherwise, marketing approach. Yes, I do personally have a lot of things that I'm interested as a service. Everything as a service business model is something that I'm extremely interested in, and that's pretty much what I was actually doing as well in the previous company, going into the whole IT and technology as a service approach and basically productizing that whole thing. That is something that's interesting for me. And then if I'm able to combine that interest with all of those things that you mentioned previously as well, and then actually be able to write a bit more, that is one thing that I would want to do as well. And in that, it's the same approach. If I'm able to bring value out even in that writing, and not just, like, asking for invoicing for every single piece of information that I give out, that's not my style. If I'm able to give out value and someone, like, wants to talk to me more about, like, how to do things, then great. Bringing value out there, like bringing content to people and then reaching out and helping. And that, for me personally, that fits perfectly. That's something I enjoy doing.
I would like to see more of your writing. If your LinkedIn profile is any indication, it looks like you tend to put words and phrases pretty well together into a comprehensive fashion. So if you haven't done so in the past, I would recommend it.
Perfect. Thank you. I've only done, like, internal documentation in the past, so I'm not able to share any of that. But yeah, I mean, that's something. It's something that I guess many can relate with. Like, you just keep on kicking yourself to just get started, and then for some reason you haven't gotten started. But starting this whole, like, entrepreneurship thing is also the best way to really, really kick yourself. It's like you don't have any options anymore. You need to do it.
Well, if you've paid attention to someone like a serial marketer like Gary Vaynerchuk, he would probably tell you to do as much as humanly possible, and outside of getting proper sleep and feeding yourself every so often, that's one way of doing it. If there was such a thing as a design sprint referral network that existed in real time, how could you foresee using such a tool or such a resource? What would you do?
Yeah, that's it's super interesting, and I've been thinking about this since, was it November? How time flies. But it's crazy for me in terms of how I'm planning planning my own business is that I actually want to keep this as a one-man show. And it's not that I don't enjoy working in a team or anything else. It's just one way that I believe that is actually a fairly efficient way of doing business nowadays, because it becomes this whole like network of like entrepreneurs that are able to like help each other. Each has their own strengths and weaknesses. And then like partnering up is always a challenge anyway. And then this goes into like the referral network. So if I actually would want to take forward a design sprint, for example, in Finland, etc., a referral network would be perfect for me, because I am able to take the facilitation forward, for example. But then again, going into development, going into building a prototype, going into graphic design, etc., I am really not able to take that forward by myself. And at that point, then of course, I do want to also build up a team for myself, but also still have that flexibility of being able to build a team that would be especially, for example, then for that particular client in any case. So that's the first thing that comes to mind.
And specific to that situation, if you need particular people that are deep in a particular type of vertical or expertise, and you're really good at covering one aspect of the engagement, then you fit the bill for one part of it, and then everyone else can be brought in to take care of that dimension of the sprint or that dimension of the project.
Exactly.
If we are doing the virtual design sprint again in April, which is going to be a whole month, are you interested in getting involved with that? And
yes.
What would you ideally want to do for that? Would you want to just be part of a sprint that is advertised or that comes up to say, here's something we're doing in this time zone, get involved? What would you ideally like to do?
What would be interesting for me is, for example, going in very much into the actual facilitation, but like I do enjoy getting my hands dirty as well. And I do like testing out like the various perspectives also in terms of like the design sprint as well. But of course, I am limited to my current knowledge and, how would I say, like talents as well. So no graphic design for me, for example, etc. But
Niko, you have 3 months to figure it out. So
okay.
I may put you on the spot in this podcast recording, but I'm not going to hold you to it. If you suddenly say, I want to facilitate, and then you're signed up for that, and April comes around and you're like, wait a minute, I didn't want to do that.
Exactly. But for example, I mean, facilitation, yes, I do love coordination. I do love getting teams together as well, and just trying to get like people to work together, and for example, even helping out in topics as such. So yeah, that's one way of going at it. And of course, I mean, yes, some of the writing is good for me as well. But like as you mentioned, like in my LinkedIn profile, trying to find value in everything. That is something that I'm always super interested in, on like how to actually like what is the business perspective of the whole thing, how to monetize something, what is the customer value, what is the business value. Those are topics that I'm always super interested in and always very keen on helping in. So,
and I really think you should write about those or do something to tell people what's in your mind. I would personally like to read more about it. So if you ever feel the need to scratch that itch, then I will wholeheartedly recommend you put something out there for people to consume.
Yeah, that is on my to-do list, and it's reminding me every single day. And actually, next week I should have time to get that writing started as well. Because for me, it's also like going into like when you go into the value question, and then also come from the technology as a service perspective, there is so much that you notice, for example, in the IT industry, for example, that it has been a box moving industry for a long time. And you know, it's like the whole, it's a hard subject for a Finnish person, but saying the Nokia, you know, downfall and going into the iPhone where suddenly like a list of features was trampled by actually having a phone that, you know, worked nicely and brought some sort of like sexiness into the whole thing, and actually, you know, like had something inside, you know, as software that brought value to your life as well. That is a lot what's going on, like in bigger terms as well, in the whole IT industry at the moment as well. So
let's get into some other things you're interested in that don't necessarily involve design sprints and whatever. So you own a couple thousand vinyl records.
yes.
Now, and I'm a DJ, so you know I'm naturally going to ask you this question. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
you get those vinyl records. Have you had them since you were a kid? Is this something where you like collecting them over time? Tell me more about that.
So yeah, as mentioned, I did semi-professionally do music stuff back in the day, and DJing was one of my focuses in, you know, and I started buying vinyl when I was around, I think 14 or 15, and around that same time I got my first turntables. And you know, some people got scooters and some people got, you know, eventually, and you know, as young adults got cars or maybe even apartments, but I had a lot of vinyl. So
so Christmas for you was getting some Technics turntables with some diamond needles.
Exactly. So yeah, I do have the SL 1210 M3s at the studio in Finland, and I miss my babies very much. I haven't seen them for a long time.
If you can name your top 5 vinyl records that you prize the most, and it doesn't have to necessarily be now, but when you got them, you were like, oh yeah, this is something I am going to play like all the time at every DJ set I do. Can you reflect on which ones you really valued?
One vinyl that always comes to mind as first, and probably because it was, well, it wasn't my first vinyls, no, but it was one of those that meant even more to me. It was Daft Punk Revolution 909. And then along the same times, then also Underworld's Dark Train, Long Train vinyl. Those were 2 records that were definitely like important for me. And then eventually a couple of years later, then Stardust Music Sounds Better With You, which for me, at least at the moment, is one of those that I'm so happy I have it on vinyl. It's a cool record still today, 17, 18 years later.
The strangest thing for me is buying music for the B-sides and never buying it for the cover or what the main sell of it was, especially if it came from promotional material. I would love to get B-sides because that's where I felt like it was the material that the record companies didn't promote, but yet still had probably the most artistic value as long as it wasn't complete trash. So you usually have to dig a little bit, but there were some complete gems, especially if you were into, at the time, the up and coming digital scene around like atmospheric music, like Moby, what Moby was doing. There was some industrial like music from Front 242 where they were doing some B-sides that were really interesting that you could sample and mix in with different sets. And I think we lost all of our audience. We have an audience of 0 now. Anymore. Okay, let's get back into official things.
Okay, we'll continue that part later then.
Yes, I can put that at the end for bonus material or something.
Exactly.
Tell me a little bit about productivity hacks, because I tend to be somebody that's all about efficiency, and especially if you kind of read between the lines with the process work that I do with design sprints. I'm always intrigued by people that are in the experimentation stage that like to try different things, whether they like, if there's Sabrina Gorge's brain sprint, there's the code sprint that New Haircut had popularized about 1.5 years ago, and they're still kind of ideating around it. There's problem framing. But then in terms of productivity and saving time, what have you found has worked for you, and what would you recommend?
That has really been it has been a full roller coaster for me, because I've tried out various things, and then at some point I noticed that some things were like super stressful. Some things, you know, helped, but like, and I got tasks done, but like they still didn't really bring. It was about like the whole thing of finding balance, and it's super tricky because for example, there was this the Best Self journal, for example, was one of these like ready-made template books basically for like going out through your like next 3 months, and then a daily schedule as well, etc. Like, I'm not a control freak in any way, but I do like order in a sense, and I do like like arranging stuff, etc. Or organization. But and I did appreciate going through that process. For example, like in the beginning of the day, of like having your priority, like top 3 priority for tasks that you want to do. Also having your own like part for like gratefulness, things that you're grateful for that day, and then really scheduling out your entire day. I do like the concept of that, but in the end, for me, it didn't really work in the way that I wanted.
You roll out of bed and go, "What the hell do I have to do today? What's going on?"
And then I tried doing it with the calendar as well. Just putting your full like schedule into a calendar, minute by minute.
I can't do that. I can't do that.
Yeah, it just didn't go for me.
No.
One thing that I really do like then is just like, yes, blocking of course time, and then having a topic around what you want to do during that time, and then like trying to find how your energy levels work throughout the day as well, and what things you're able to do best at which point of the day as well. These are things that I've tested out with and found some success. I mean, in terms of like, I do prefer, for example, doing research stuff in the evenings, for example, and then definitely writing more in the mornings, in terms of like creative writing, for example.
I believe it was a book by Daniel Pink that talks about the times of day where you're the most productive. It's going to be different for every person, but trying to track when that happens, and scheduling the kind of items or to-dos that you do that would correspond to that kind of theme of that hour, or that part of the day. So if you're more productive at night, then you do most of your creative work at night. Or if your to-do list is, you're more energetic at the beginning of the week, then at the beginning of the week, you schedule your highest priority items towards that particular day. I haven't done it myself because my default is doing, ironically enough, the impact effort scale, and putting my to-do list and just filtering it out on that in Mural, and then figuring out when in that upper left-hand column what I do. If I get all that done in 1 week, then I'm pretty happy with everything else. Everything else is just kind of butter at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, the prioritization is like, it's key to everything. Otherwise, you just like start doing those small tasks, and you feel that you're accomplishing something, but you're just getting small tasks done that don't necessarily actually have. They go forward, yes, but I mean, not in the same sense if you would have put that effort into one of those big tasks that actually, for example, for me, just getting that blog post written.
Yeah, it's about self-awareness, but it's also being easy on yourself, because you're your own worst enemy when it comes to hammering yourself for not getting stuff done. And I do what I can. I have a certain amount of time I can do during the day, and I'm assuming it's the same with you, Niko. You can do only so much given your dependencies on other things, and given this is your first endeavor into doing your own business, there's a lot. I mean, it all starts and ends with you. There's no one else to blame now. It's pretty much you're the central focus of what happens with this.
Yeah, exactly. And going into that, actually, like, one thing like that I feel is definitely key is to restricting the time of day, the time used in your day to actually, like, what is for work, what is for life, like other life, let's say, what is for exercise, etc. Because I've been so lucky that even in my previous job, I have been able to have a fairly flexible schedule in terms of like when I do work, etc. But it is also, it's a death trap in terms of, if you feel that you can do work whenever, then you actually start doing it a little bit whenever, and then you actually might notice that you never get done because you're able to do it whenever.
There's no pressure. There really is no external or internal pressure to kind of get something out the door.
Exactly. And then the simple fact, it's like with I like the example for when you're going on vacation, for example, starting your holidays, and you have that last day of work. you suddenly get a lot done because you have that time limit basically for the day. You need to be out of the office at 4 p.m., for example. And then you have a very clear plan on what you do until 4 p.m. And then 4 p.m. it's done with. You don't continue it. Then again, if you do have a super flexible schedule, it's too easy then to also go into the fact like, yeah, I'll just sit on the couch. I'll do a little bit of work here and there. Then you might even notice that you didn't even do any work during the 2 hours, and then eventually you didn't get anything done, nor did you get anything done necessarily in the morning.
True, but the mindset of someone like me that's in my late 40s that has so many dependencies and so many responsibilities versus somebody that may have that mindset in the 20s and 30s is diametrically different. Because I remember during that time, even though I had gobs and gobs of free time, I filled it up with doing business related stuff and learning and cooking and stuff like that, because I didn't have the same interest that my friends did of going out and, going to parties and everything else. I was the person that just wanted to explore different stuff. So it's about mindset, it's self-awareness, but there's a couple of things that have really helped me. One is that there's a program called Now Then Pro, or Now Then. And it's what was really groundbreaking for me and that I recommend to everyone is to get that program. It's an app that's available on Android as well as from the App Store on Apple. Yeah. And it's a time tracker, but it's a visual one. So you can basically put categories of different things, just tap and it tracks your time, and just do it for a day. Because what I discovered that I was spending way too much time basically with certain things that didn't need to be tended to right away and could be delayed, whereas some things I knew that needed to be done, I should have scheduled right off the bat. That and StrengthsFinder. I had partnered with a coach, a professional strengths coach, to make sense of the test as well as how I can make it actionable. And that completely changed things in terms of my dynamic with how I got things done as an entrepreneur. Because not everyone's going to be strategic or empathetic. It's that self-awareness thing about knowing who you are and what your strengths are that I try to promote with everyone. And one of the things I saw in your profile and the way you described it and putting things together, and I heard it in your conversation about arranging things, that's part of the reason why I like doing these events is I love arranging like teams and opportunities and seeing where things come together and using that data to work it out. So my question to you would be is that if you thought of your native strengths in terms of what you bring to the table and what you've been talking about, when you bring it back to your business that you're starting, what strengths do you find that you bring to the table that are going to come to the forefront, that you easily see yourself employing when you're doing work for your clients?
For me, I've always found it comfortable being a bit of a middleman. So be it, for example, between the development team and the sales team and the marketing team and such, for example, or also from previous work, being the middleman between the jazz band and the restaurant owner.
But why so? Why do you find yourself in that position?
I have no idea. Probably some psychologist could answer that a bit better. But it's probably a Freud thing. But in the end, it is something that's comfortable for me, and it is like trying to understand both perspectives and trying to understand exactly like what the values are for both sides, and then just trying to find a way to make it also work for both sides and finding that win-win situation always for everyone. So that is something that is definitely, I feel that is trust, it is a strength for me. And for whatever reason, one reason why I'm able to talk to many of old customers, for example, as well, is that many people do trust me as well, and extremely grateful for that. But I do believe that it's also very much the fact that, I've always given everything like 110, and I also try to stay very humane, in everything that I do, and try to understand everyone's perspective as well.
So could you see yourself being the person that holds the relationship with the business, but still find yourself getting in the weeds, getting dirty, and in doing the work?
Yeah, easily so. And that is actually the very thing that I enjoy doing the most. Definitely. going into the coding or, because for example, in technology or IT, I mean, I have done the whole, infrastructure stuff, not necessarily like administering it completely or being an architect or anything like that. But yes, I do know how like, virtual servers, et cetera, work in itself. But I don't want to go too deep into that. But it is still like super interesting for me, and I'm interested in the technologies behind, et cetera. But I don't see myself as a sales guy either, or the marketing guy, et cetera. So
no, I don't either. I sense that you're somebody that tries to understand and then try to find connections between what a company is asking for, or what an individual is looking for, and how they can actually achieve that. At least that's my opinion. But
exactly.
Yeah, you got to get out there and tell people more about that, especially with your liking to have that conversation on the high end, but also to kind of get into the details of how things work out. Yeah, you need to do a little bit more storytelling around that, because I think it would really I would really like to see it. So I'm selfishly telling you that you need to work harder, Niko. Get off your butt and start doing stuff.
Brilliant. This is exactly what I needed. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. So if I'm going to track you in 2019 and find out everything that you're doing, where am I going to be paying attention to?
It will be very much like, in terms of topics, it will be very much along the topics of technology and IT as a service, and the whole transformation that is happening in terms of that. But also like just modern workplace is also something that is it's an interesting topic for me, because it is actually exactly those things where you need to look into the technologies available, also like where the company wants to be going in terms of their own digital strategy.
Well, sorry, will you be posting on LinkedIn or Facebook? Where will you be putting
Sorry. LinkedIn will be my primary channel.
Yeah, you should, because organic reach on that channel is going to be amazing this year. I think it's starting to take off. So yeah, that would be, I would like to see your stuff there. Anything happening in Helsinki? Anything local that you're getting involved with, like activities or events or things of that nature?
There will be. That's all I can say at the moment.
I'm catching you at the very beginning of the year, so I'm assuming you have a lot of things planned.
Yes, very much so, and they will be focused very much in Helsinki, Finland. So basically, and I will be announcing all of these also on my LinkedIn.
Forward it to me so that I can also promote it as well. I'll look forward to those events when they come up. I think we're good. Do you have anything else you want to bring up, Niko?
Not particular at the moment. In terms of the referral network, actually, I do have enough time actually now, so that if there is something that I can do to help you out with that effort, please do say.
Okay. If I do have asks that I know that are specific to you, then I'll reach out to you. But I may just post general kind of things like, okay, here's where I'm stuck, or here's where I need perspective. That's probably where you'll see more from me.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, cool. All right, Niko, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. You're more than welcome to come back on again. I do want to hear what you do in the future. Please let me know when you post something up, and I definitely want to take a look at it when it's ready.
Thank you, Robert. This was much appreciated and enjoyed talking with you.
All right, we'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Thanks again for listening to the Dallas Design Sprints podcast. If you have a question or comment about what you heard on today's show, email me direct at robert@dallasdesignsprints.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Pinterest. Just do a Google search for Robert Scrobe, or ask a friend and see if they know. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next time.